my whole life changed overnight. To start with, I know I absolutely don't have to explain my health to anyone, and the reason that I want to do this is because I think there might be other people out there like me that have struggled through similar stuff. And in fact, I know they are, because I posted about this on my Instagram story and I had a couple of messages from people that have had these weird random symptoms that have been popping up for years and they've not really understood them or why they're happening. And if anything, if you are someone that relates to me and my experience, then maybe it will give you some information to go to your doctor and like highlight the symptoms and maybe help you figure it out. But over the last couple of months, I've had a bit of a health crash and a realization, and it's not the one that you think it's going to be. Fitness wasn't making me healthier, or at least the kind of fitness that I've been doing. And I know this is going to trigger a load of people, specifically the man baby that likes to make videos about me, which honestly I find hilarious. There are loads of people that are going to say stuff in the comments like, you've always got something, there's always something, there's always some excuse, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's called comorbidity. That's what happens when you've had 30 odd years of trauma, mental illness, high stress, loads of other stuff going on. You end up with all these little things that start cropping up. And no, it's not because I exist in a larger body. In fact, well, we'll get to that. So I am officially 1 year postpartum, and obviously I had a C-section, so my recovery has been slightly more difficult than maybe other people that have had a more natural birth. All births are so different though. And I spent the last year recovering and rebuilding. And obviously at the start of the year, I was still in my old mindset. I got back into CrossFit pretty quickly, 6 weeks postpartum, obviously managed in a way that was okay for my C-section recovery, but I did it. And I was literally snatching like pretty soon afterwards. And I've built back up to, well, I didn't even really need to build back up to it because I trained the whole way through pregnancy and I can still lift basically all of the weights that I could lift before. And also my fitness was maintained, which I didn't really understand, but my fitness when it comes to CrossFit was pretty well maintained, and I just wanted a new challenge. And I had this feeling that basically I wanted to be more aerobically fit, so I wanted to be able to do longer duration stuff like a high rocks. I set my sights on doing a high rocks, and that meant that I had to do less CrossFit and do more aerobic training work, because basically the duration and the style of the sessions don't really lend themselves to aerobic capacity. And like, I'm not going to spend time teaching you the stuff that you need to know that that's accurate. Like, go look at Wood Science's page, he's amazing. If you disagree with me, like, go disagree with the actual science, do whatever you want. But I knew completing a high rocks was going to be a massive feat, especially having just had a baby and only just getting back into running and not being that kind of fit like I was the last time that I did it. So I built up to that, and that took quite a while. I think I did it when I was like 6 or 7 months postpartum, and I completed my high rocks in January. It took me a long time, of course it's going to. I was literally still recovering and only just got back into running, dealing with lots of other challenges, but I smashed it. I did it, and I'm really proud of myself. And yeah, I've been trying to get a ticket for another one ever since, but I mean, they're hard to come by now in the UK. And I started doing more hybrid training. I started really enjoying that, and I kind of realized that I was moving on from my 9 years of CrossFit. The CrossFitters get so mad about me talking about CrossFit. Now I do it a lot less. And it's so funny because it's been like my life for like 9 years, and I've been literally obsessed with it. It's been my special interest, let's be honest. So yeah, I'm still going to talk about it. I'm probably going to talk about it forever, and I still enjoy it. So I was trying to balance work, training, recovery, and obviously raising an entire human, and all of the postpartum trauma drama that came with that, especially when you're a mum that really cares about your baby's well-being and boundaries and body autonomy and a lot of stuff that parents nowadays care about, but maybe back in the day they didn't so much. So you get a lot of disagreement and a lot of people trying to cross your boundaries when you're a parent early postpartum, which is just tragic, because I also had mental health struggles postpartum. I was juggling a ridiculous amount of stuff postpartum, and I have no idea how I made it to completing my high rocks. I kept pushing because it was normal, and that's what I'm used to, and that's just what I do. That's how I have lived my life for the last 30 years. I'm a very driven person, and I find it really hard to undo that, and I find it really difficult to rest. So that's what I kept doing. I started to notice more and more warning signs. And it's odd because some of these symptoms were coming up before pregnancy, and some of them started to arrive after or just worsen, and I started to notice lots of warning signs. And putting them together. And I think that was the crucial part, is there were all these random symptoms that I didn't really know were symptoms, and then I started putting them together and I was like, oh, this is like a picture. So obviously, if you paid attention to my pregnancy journey, I was fainting during pregnancy. I also had basically HG, but it wasn't diagnosed because they weren't tracking my weight because I have a history of eating disorders. I was losing weight whilst pregnant, which was not helpful, being sick every single day and also fainting. And I thought that that was just connected, and obviously they thought that that was just connected, like obviously she's fainting because of that, and also pregnancy can mess with your blood pressure. And I had low blood pressure pre-pregnancy. I've had low blood pressure all of my life. Through my teens I had issues fainting a lot of the time, and even in my adult life I've had a few issues with fainting spells. They just tell you that it's kind of, you just have to live with it, which is really frustrating. And that it's hormonal, obviously, the irony. Post-pregnancy, I kind of expected the fainting and everything to go away, and it did for a little bit. But then it started to come back, and I would get this, I'd go really pale, and I'd get this dragging feeling, and I'd feel like I was going to pass out. And in many cases, my vision would start to either go spotty or black, and I would nearly faint. And I would have to lie down on the ground or sit down on the ground. And I was also having blood sugar crashes, which is also known as reactive hypoglycemia. And basically, we knew this was blood sugar related because if I ate some sweets, then it would be fixed. Which was crazy. So of course, off the back of that, I got tested for diabetes. I've been tested for diabetes so many times, and it is clear that I do not have diabetes. It's not that. But that's what that kept making me think, and it was really confusing. So I've got those symptoms, and basically they're getting worse. The more I'm exercising, the healthier I become, the more stuff I do that's related to fitness and health, the worse these are getting. And that's really confusing. And then obviously we've got the weight gain, and I don't really like to talk about the weight gain because obviously I am in recovery from an eating disorder, and most of the time I don't like to address it, and that's part of the reason why this has been so overlooked. But my training style over the years has not really changed. The amount of training that I've been doing over the years has not really changed. My movement hasn't really changed. And also my diet hasn't really changed. And the internet will love to say, oh, she's just eating junk. She goes to like KFC and McDonald's or whatever every single day. None of that is true. I eat a really balanced, healthy diet. I eat a lot of vegetables in my diet. I eat lots of whole foods. I have nutrition qualifications, so I know exactly how to eat healthy. But still, I gained over 40 kilos in the space of a couple of years. That's like 80, 90 pounds plus for those of you in America. And I just kind of chalk this up to a rebound from my eating disorder and being underfed for so many years. I thought it was my metabolism basically fighting back. And I started to also feel worse and worse, especially after the higher intensity sessions. And I started to feel much better after the lower intensity sessions. And I felt like I'm quite good at listening to my body, and that was my body trying to tell me something. And then another spanner in the works. About a month ago, I had wisdom tooth surgery, and I had my top ones out a really long time ago. If you've had your top ones out, it's completely different to that. I had my bottom teeth out. So I basically have had like TMJ, which is like when you have like really over tight jaw muscles for a really long time, obviously chronically stressed. I had a nerve that had been like trapped underneath that tooth for a super long time. I have to get this other one out as well, which I'm absolutely dreading. They only managed to get one out because it was so wedged into my jaw because I've been clenching my teeth for so many years. Anyway, I had wisdom tooth removal and it completely wiped me out. And that also meant that I could barely eat, so I was on a liquid diet for a really long time, which I hated. I started to hate food, and my eating disorder brain started to kick in, and I was like, what if I just don't eat, because this is just so painful and I just don't want to eat food. I don't want to drink soup and vegetables anymore. I got to the point where I had to just drink out of a bottle because even having any sort of food pass over the top of the healing site would put me in extreme pain. And the pain that I'm talking here is not low-level pain. If you've ever been in labour, and yes, I'm talking giving birth labour for which I was in labour for 12 hours. So yes, I had a C-section, but I did also experience full labour, and it was worse than that. It was a pain worse than labour, and I was also in that kind of pain for weeks. It was horrendous, and I was put on very, very strong painkillers, and then eventually this nerve blocking medication, which it turns out is also used to treat PTSD and anxiety, which I have. And my whole life changed overnight. having the wisdom tooth surgery had actually exacerbated some of my symptoms as well. I was getting more of these blood sugar crashes and like low blood pressure as well. Just out of nowhere, I started taking this medication and it felt like all of the tension was released from my whole body, and I'd realised I'd been in this state where I was just tensed and in fight or flight for years and years, for my whole life, basically for my whole life, or the majority of it at least. Loads of my PTSD symptoms started to improve, but then also loads of these other symptoms started to improve, and I will go into some of those as well in a minute. It was weird. And I started to speak to my doctor about this, obviously, and then I'd already been speaking to her about the blood sugar crashes and the other stuff, and we'd done so many blood tests already and nothing was really showing up until we started testing my cortisol. And part of the reason I wasn't sure whether I wanted to speak about this is because so many wellness influencers co-opt the whole, your cortisol's too high, like don't drink coffee too early. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about clinically diagnosable issues with cortisol and hormonal issues. If you think you've got issues with your cortisol, go to the doctor, get it tested. My cortisol started coming out low, and this is the other point, it's not always high, sometimes it is dangerously low, and my cortisol was very, very low, to the point it started to point towards adrenal insufficiency. That's basically when your adrenals stop functioning properly and they're unable to produce the cortisol that your body needs just to get up in the morning. So it's actually insane that I was managing to do anything despite push through everything that I have done for the last couple of years. And then on top of that, I was having loads of other symptoms, but basically like hair loss, like around this part of my hairline. My skin has always been super oily, and it got to the point where it was going really dry, and I was so confused. And it like dry and tight and itchy and weird. I've been getting like dark patches on my skin in different places. Obviously the weight gain was a symptom, and the blood sugar crashes, like blood sugar instability, blood pressure instability, really serious fatigue. Actually, I'm gonna read some of the symptoms out to you as well. So we've already gone through a lot of them. Brain fog, poor memory, difficulty focusing, cold hands and feet. So this was kind of pointing towards more like thyroid function issues. Dry skin, we said that. Hair shedding, especially after washing my hair. Like, I have so much hair and my hair falls out all the time, but it was getting ridiculous. Digestive changes and like bloating, that kind of stuff. Again, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because it wasn't like massively bad, but it was there. Unrefreshed sleep, that was a big one. I kept feeling like I was going to sleep and I was waking up in my sleep. I mean, I do have a baby as well, so it's hard to really know what is impacting you and what is just normal. But I was waking up and feeling like I hadn't slept at all, which again was really confusing. My resting heart rate is really low, and actually that can be a bit of a flag for stuff like thyroid issues and any other kind of dysregulation with hormones. Menstrual changes, again, which is normal after pregnancy but is also a flag. Waking a lot during the night to go to the loo, which again is another big red flag for hormone issues. And then yeah, we've covered the blood sugar crashes, and there's probably more. Honestly, there was loads of these little symptoms that day by day you can kind of ignore them because they're not that much of an issue. Like, I can put moisturizer on my face and my dry skin feels a bit better. The weight gain, I've kind of gone into like a body acceptance sort of mindset. The hair loss, I'm like, yeah, well, I'm stressed, like that's probably what that is. Or you get like postpartum hair loss as well. There's loads of things that could be put underneath like postpartum, but then the thing is, some of them had started showing up years before. Like, I was actually losing some hair around here a couple of years before. I can't remember when the dry skin started, but basically all of these things started creeping up, and then they just started getting worse and worse and worse. And to the point the blood sugar crashes and blood pressure dips were so bad that I was barely coping with life anymore, and the fatigue was just so, like, I've been having to like lie on the floor and stuff. I've been so fatigued during the day, especially in recovery from what's been going on as well, because everything is coming back online and it's hard. So the working diagnosis that we have for this that I've been going through is called HPA axis dysfunction, and that is basically when you've been under so much stress for such a long time, and also adding on top high intensity training and not just high intensity training but competing in CrossFit and just pushing and pushing and pushing for such a long time. It increases your cortisol and it makes your adrenal glands work overtime. And basically my body had got to the point where they've been functioning so much that they can no longer function, that I can no longer produce cortisol as well as it should be. And basically it's all become a bit dysregulated. And we're now in the testing phase to see whether, because of some of this medication that I've now been put on that is decreasing my stress, whether my HPA axis will kind of reboot itself and the symptoms will start to improve just with that, or whether I need a further intervention and further medication and further looking into adrenal insufficiency, which can be really dangerous and actually life-threatening, because sometimes you get to the point where your adrenals literally stop working, and then you need supplementation for those hormones that your body can no longer produce because they're fucked. Like, it's kind of like diabetes. When someone with diabetes, their pancreas can no longer produce insulin, they have to take insulin. It's the same thing with this. You have to take some form of cortisol, or I don't actually know the full treatment, but basically if it keeps progressing, that's the route that we might have to go down, which is scary. But because I've been put on this medication and my symptoms have started to improve, we are just going to continue to test it and continue to monitor it. And I'm really thankful that my doctor has been so great with this, to see if it is improving and keep doing blood tests, keep doing other tests to see if it does reboot. And then I have to actually commit to not pushing myself so much and not doing so much high intensity, which I'm really trying. So then of course CrossFit has been a massive problem for this, because for the last 9 years I've been doing CrossFit, and CrossFit is unique in a way, and we all know that because those of us that love CrossFit know how unique it is, but it's because it's such a high demand on your body when you've got weightlifting and high intensity in one thing. Too much intensity, too little recovery, so many stresses on the body all in one go. It creates repeated cortisol and adrenaline surges, especially because it can be a bit varied. It can be very varied, in fact. It can also put your body in low level fight or flight, and it has a very high nervous system demand. And as we know, my body has been in chronic fight or flight for a very long time anyway, because of my mental illness, my PTSD, and just general trauma and fuckery. And honestly, I ignored the truth for a while because I loved CrossFit. But as you know, if you have been watching my videos updating on my training, I have reduced it quite a lot. I reduced it down to even one session a week. And then what was really weird for me is I could do something like a spin class, which is high intensity. For 40 minutes, it's high intensity, and it's basically interval based. And I wouldn't have any issues doing a high intensity spin class, but then I would go to a CrossFit class and suddenly I'd nearly faint. And it wasn't because my fitness wasn't there. I was excelling still in a lot of the workouts. I was doing really well in a lot of the anaerobic stuff. It was just, I don't know, like randomly I would just start passing out or feeling like my blood sugar had gone through the floor, or going pale and going dizzy and literally being unable to move from machinery to machinery, which again, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, it's just high intensity. I don't understand how this is different to everything else. But now I've started to put the pieces together and also obviously speak to professionals about it. It does make sense because it's weightlifting, it's more varied, and it's a higher stressor. And Hyrox isn't like that either, because it's more rhythmic, it's long duration, it's more predictable. You're not lifting heavier weights, you're not lifting the kind of weights that you lift in CrossFit. They are lower level weights, and you're also doing more like steadier stuff for about 40 minutes instead of really high intensity super fast. So there isn't that much demand on your adrenals as there would be in CrossFit. But I deeply love the structure and the enjoyment within CrossFit, the community, the fun. I was obsessed with it, as you know, but I needed training that was more built around health, longevity, and adaptability, so I can kind of flex it around how I'm feeling and how my body is recovering or not. I hope you're keeping up with this, because I know this is a lot to literally info dump. And now, my health is kind of my special interest, and I've looked into this a lot. I've done a lot of research, as you can probably tell, and obviously a lot of testing and a lot of speaking to professionals, and just I've been trying to figure it out, and that's what I do. I'm unable to let go of something. When I know something is going wrong in any area of my life, I am unable to let go. So now, the way I'm rebuilding my life is I'm exploring new movement again. And this is something that I wish I had done the whole time I was doing CrossFit, but every time I did do something like sea swimming or climbing, people would tell me that I'm unfocused and that I need to work harder on my gymnastics and that I need to be focusing on getting better at CrossFit. And no, you can't go swimming because that's just for the elite athletes. No, you can't go on a bike ride because that's just for the elite athletes. Like, fuck off. And that was it, because I wanted to be good at CrossFit and I wanted to stay competitive at CrossFit. I listened to them and I shouldn't have done. So recently I've started climbing again. I've started doing more walking. I did a box fit class the other day. I started doing spin classes. I'm still doing functional training, but I'm doing it in the gym and I'm working with my body, not against it. So if I feel like I can do high intensity, I do high intensity, but I make sure I give myself enough rest in between and I make sure it follows a format that my body is okay with on that day. I'm doing activities that are more adventurous and enjoyable. And I've also started, I'm doing pre-season next week. I'm so excited. Looking into other team sports that I used to love team sports in school, and I've started rugby. I'm so excited. So for those of you in America, I know, like, you probably know of Alona Mar now. She's a fucking weapon. But yeah, so rugby is a thing that is something the rest of the world do. We have a World Cup. It's fantastic. And also the Six Nations, and like, rugby's huge. And I know in America it's more about American football. It's kind of like American football, but actually also very different, and without the armour. We don't do that. I'll put some images on the screen of what rugby's like, but basically it's a great crossover for me because it involves fitness, which I love, and it also involves strength and capacity and power and explosiveness, and I have those in bundles as well, which is good. And I've always wanted something that I can use the strength and fitness that I have, but it's really hard to find. And I feel like maybe this is the answer. I'm just trying it for now, and I don't know if this is going to work with my health issues that are going on, because obviously it is going to be quite high adrenaline, but it is also longer duration, more steadier state, and kind of a bit more predictable still than CrossFit. And it's not going to be lifting heavy weights. It might be lifting heavy people, but it's going to be different. I'm just going to play it by ear, but I'm really, really, really excited. And let's be honest, it's the closest to like real world battle that I can possibly get. And I've been doing like more steady state cardio as well, and just realizing that fitness that lasts, helps more with longevity and health, is going to be better for me in the long run. And that doesn't look like the fitness that I've been doing for the last 9 years, unfortunately. And then on top of that, my whole business is literally involved with it as well. I've created the Long Game Training Club, which is basically all of the programs that I've ever written that are now in one big model that you can just sign up to, and then you can switch tracks as you feel. So if you want to do some more like strength and fitness based stuff, then you can do that. And then if you want to switch to a hybrid training program, then you can do that, all within the same program. And then if maybe you need to start with like 10-minute workouts, you can start with a 10-minute workout program at home, and then you can switch into an in-gym functional fitness program. And then the other side of this is that, as you know, I'm a fantasy reader. I'll put my reading streak up. I don't know what it is right now. I think it's near 900 days in a row, which is insane. I'm currently reading Serpent and Wings of Night, the series. I don't know, I'm on the second book. I read on a Kindle, so I often don't know what book I'm on. But yeah, it's great. I love it. And I created this whole business called Outlast Training Academy, which is a fantasy story that you kind of live in. You read it like a book. You get like a bit of the story every single day, or like every couple of days. You get meal challenges that help you like cook like you're in a tavern. You get training sessions that train you for as if you're training for battle, and that also would help you in the real world if you're like a hiker or a climber or someone that likes to do more adventurous fitness. And it fits with this too. It's like lower, steadier state. There are like crossing the realm options, which you can do as a run or a walk. And basically I'm kind of also following that training style. There are even swims. I've put swims in there. There's loads of other stuff, and you get points based on whether you actually meet a percentage of your training for the week, not like how much you do. More is not better. Working with your body is better. And both of these training styles support the nervous system and health, and working with your body instead of against it and trying to force it into some fitness model that somebody else tells you is the best way to get fit and healthy, which that's just not true. There are loads of ways to get fit and healthy. There is no one way. At the end of the day, performance, health and longevity can exist without burnout and without actually being detrimental to your health like it has been for me. And I'm so glad that I recognised that this was a health problem, and that I eventually, after too long, have put all of the things together and then gone to my doctor and got it tested and figured it out. And now I know that it's like a big problem with everything that I've gone through, and then also the load that I was putting on top of that CrossFit. And I'm sure there are other people out there like me. This is not going to happen to everybody. There's loads of people that can do CrossFit and do it frequently and not experience this kind of thing. But if you're somebody that struggles with mental health and has like chronically high cortisol anyway and has lots of symptoms of something like PTSD or anxiety disorder, or I've also got like bipolar disorder, anything else like that, that means that you are a very stressed person, adding more stress on can actually really tax your adrenals and your cortisol and like the whole system that makes that function. And it is just something to keep an eye on. And if you do feel like any of the symptoms that I mentioned do fit with something that you're going through, then speak to your doctor. This is not do not self-diagnose. Don't diagnose yourself with something that I have because you think you relate to it. But it is okay to say, oh, that does sound like me. Maybe I should go and get it checked out. And I know that's really difficult as well because health is expensive in lots of countries. And I am so lucky to live in the UK where we have a healthcare system that is publicly funded and I have not had to pay for any of these tests. And I am so sorry for all of you that do have to pay ridiculous amounts for any kind of testing. But also I guess there is a way you can look at this kind of stuff. You can look into it and research into it, and you can start doing little things like reducing intensity and working with your body a little bit more that might be able to alleviate some of your symptoms without having to go for the testing too. So I guess the message is to work with your body, not against it. And when it starts telling you that high intensity is not working for you, listen to it, because it actually can become dangerous and potentially life-threatening. That was a lot. I feel like I've massively overshared. I'm sorry for info dumping my entire health journey on you, but honestly I just want to tell you, just to help one person out there. If somebody else watches this video and they think, yeah, that sounds like me, and they get help for it, then I think that's a win. Did you hear about the woman that said that if you're over 200 pounds then you shouldn't do Pilates? Well, I did a response to the reactions, I know, terrible, or reaction to reactions video on that whole topic, because it shows a really big issue within the fitness industry as a whole, not just the Pilates space, but everywhere. Fitness is not a look, and these people literally prove that. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.